It's Ross Fader back once again, and today we're going to do some more jungle pads. So today I'm going to show you how to layer some different VST sounds to achieve that early 90s jungle vibe. The kind you would have heard in good looking records, reinforced, or even early moving shadow. And we're going to be doing that by layering three key elements: a bass layer, a movement layer, and an ambience layer to put the whole thing into space. Once we have all the layers, I'll show you some effects that I use to glue it all together. And then we can drag it either into the built-in sampler or the Amigo to be able to play those transposed chords, just like you would have heard on an early 90s hardware sampler. Today I'll be using the Korg Wavestation and M1. I'll be using some VSTs from the Arturia suite, and I'll be using some FX from Soundtoys. But you can follow along with any VST and any FX. All right, let's jump in. So I talk about the three key elements of layering pads. You want a really solid bass layer that fills out the frequency range. We want a movement layer, and we can use effects to increase that movement. And we want a layer of ambience, and that might be white noise or crickets or something like that, or another VST just to add some extra sparkle. So the first thing we're going to do is open up an instance of the Wavestation, which is an absolute pad machine if you don't have it already, Korg Wavestation. And I'm just going to go to this entropy performance. The tricky thing about the Korg Wavestation is it doesn't really have an init patch or initialize patch. So we can open a simple performance like this that only has a couple of sounds layered, and we can just dial them back to 0 or back to nothing. Make sure that in your effects we're turning both of those effects off, and then back in your perform, make sure all the key zones are lit up. So if you choose something other than entropy, it might not be the same way. So then I'm going to pick that first slot and open up my list. And one that I really love is this slow strings preset. Let's load that and see what that sounds like by itself. Beautiful. Could be a pad all by itself. So let's open this up. And I've created this chord. It's an A major 7 over 9, and by itself it sounds like this. Nice. So I'm layering that with this, and it's a patch called PadMax 1 in the multi section of the Korg M1, another awesome VST. So by itself, sounds like this. And I've put the phase mistress on this to give it some more movement. So you can see that when I press play. Gives it that back and forth movement. The other thing that I found is really good to layer on top of pads is this pure LoFi. So it's one from Arturia, and they've layered sample sounds with an oscillator engine. So it sounds really cool. It's got a bunch of noise in there. It's got some piano, awesome stuff. Put it all together and make sure that you route everything to a group channel, which I've called pads, and then route that pads channel to your resample channel. So let's see the sound that we made by layering those three things: the Wavestation, the M1, and the pure LoFi. That's our first little pad there. So thrown it in the stock Cubase sampler, and we'll just play it up and down the keys with some breaks and a respace to see what it would have sounded like in an early 90s sampler. Alright, you get the idea. Let's keep it rolling. So for a second example here, I've used the DX7. So DX7, another awesome early 90s synth, recreated by Arturia, and sounds amazing. So nice kind of bass level there. Layered that with another DX7 patch. This one's called Grandiosa Palace. Bit of movement there. The only thing I've done is really drag that attack to make it more pad-like. And we've got that layer of the M1 using the patch Winter Sweep. Heaps of res on that. It's almost like it's got the Phase Mistress on it already. Let's see what those three laid together and resampled turned out like. And in context with some breaks and a bass line. Alright, example number 3. So this time I'm going to drag something straight into the Amigo. So we know that we love the Amigo. It's going to give us some different sounds, some different characteristics, but same general theory. Your bass layer, your movement layer, and some ambience to create a really cool pad. So we've reused the slow strings out of the Wavestation. So we heard that before. Layered that with Pad Max once again. And for our ambience layer, we are using the Vocoder V in this preset called Texturia. It sounds like by itself. All together as a resampled pad. Alright, we've resampled that, we've dragged it into the Amigo here using that load function. It really would be nice if we could drag and drop from a project straight into the Amigo, maybe in the next version. But here we go. Here's another example of layering a Wavestation with the M1 and some pure LoFi. Alright, I thought I'd show another way to do things. So this is going to give you another different texture, same sounds, layered in the same way, but not layered as chords. We're going to layer some single notes. So I've used that DX7 sound, the moving fifths, and the M1 pad max, and that pure lo-fi sample. But instead of writing a chord, I've just written a long note, which is C. And we've resampled it. It sounds like this. Still a bit going on there. Still some nice layering, but the real fun starts when we drag that into the sampler. So for the first example, just using the Cubase sampler, I've written that chord progression, and it's going to sound a little bit different. Doing the same thing in the Amigo. So we've got that single sample of one note, a C note. We've dragged that into the Amigo, and things are going to trigger at different points. So we've set a loop, and it'll be a ping pong loop, but every note will play at a different speed from the moment we hit them. So you can see that visually on the screen right here. And we get some interesting textures, some interesting back and forth from the ping pong and from the notes playing at different speeds. So same sample, but now in the Amigo, sounds completely different. Sounds like this. That's not all. There's some extra secret sauce that I put on top of these. So you'll see on my pads channel here, I've put the effect rack. So a couple of go-to effects that I'm usually going to put on every pad that I make is some kind of delay. So I'm using that Space Blender, which I believe is on special right now. It's an absolute beast from Sound Toys. And I'm using Super Plate, which is just a really nice reverb plugin. But if you don't have the Sound Toys suite, any delay, I use Valhalla Supermassive a lot. That's going to do the trick, and it's free. And any reverb is going to add a bit of depth, make whatever you're layering sound cooler. Here's some other examples we whipped up. So that's my process for creating some unique early 90s jungle pads. Your 3 layers, base layer, movement and ambience, some effects to pull it all together, and then resampling it and dragging it into the Amigo for those pitch shifted chords. If you found this helpful, hit like and drop a comment below. And if you're interested in downloading some of the pad sounds that I created, make sure you comment. If I get enough interest, I'll put it all together into a sample pack and make it available for my subscribers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.